Unimaginable intelligence. This is the title of a YouTube clip that does the rounds on social media. And it's about a young girl called Carly Fleischman who has a speech disability, and she learns to communicate using a computer program. And it really pisses me off. It's not Carly and her family, they're really inspirational. It's the tagline that people use when they're sharing it. Why is this unimaginable? Why couldn't anyone imagine that Carly was always intelligent and just technology caught up? Carly has autism. Now, most people would understand autism as one of two extremes. On the one hand, we have the savant, the Rain Man, if you like, who can count cards, memorise a calendar, or redraw a map of an entire city after only seeing it once. And popular culture has lionised these people to the point when someone finds out that your child is autistic and not artistic, they'll ask you, "Oh, what's their special talent?" It's not the Miss World pageant. The other extreme of autism that we understand is when someone has more unreachable autism. They might be predominantly non-verbal. They might have tantrums or inexplicable meltdowns, like you just saw there. This little girl is obviously distressed, she's agitated because someone switched the internet off. Now, who here hasn't said a few choice words when their Wi-Fi fails? Well, this little girl didn't have any words. And like Carly, she's judged by her ability to communicate our way. This little girl is my daughter Grace. Like her brother Liam, she has autism. And they're now teenagers, and as charming and interesting and lovable as any mother could hope for. Grace is the reason that I created the Grace app. Grace app is a communication system for smartphones and tablets, which won a United Nations World Summit Award a couple of years ago. It was created to support my daughter, but a speech disability can happen at anybody, at any time. Of the 2,000 odd people who can fit in this theatre, 5 of you will have a stroke in the next 12 months. Another 7 might have a brain injury. And in the general population, 1 in 100 people has autism. Now, any of these can result in a speech delay. And you might imagine that there would be services set up to respond to communication difficulties. After all, as a society, we have evolved and legislated to make allowances for mobility impairments. We widen doorways, we build ramps, and we set aside special parking. But there are no ramps for communication impairment. And if you were one of those people who, as a result of having an accident, lost the use of your legs, no one would expect you to climb up a flight of stairs. But if you have a speech delay, and if you could imagine, for instance, you had autism, first you'd have to wait for a diagnosis. And then you would go on a waiting list for services, which in the case of autism could be several years. And in all that time, you would have no way of communicating appropriately. Can you even imagine how frustrating that is? I can. In the morning, I can't function without a decent cup of coffee. So when I travel, I have to go out of my hotel and look for one of those American coffee franchises. I can just about manage to queue up and place my order until the cashier wants me to call it one of those matey-uppy coffee names, a venti or something. And they want me to say it their way, and I just want to jump across the counter and shake them and say, "Just give me my coffee." Well, that's how it feels. And with autism, even when people do manage to get services, Carers and professionals alike will put off providing an alternative means of communication in order to let the words come. Now, if you had a stroke or a brain injury, you might imagine that our hospitals and acute care services would be set up, but they're not. And you could have quite a wait for someone to come to your bedside and give you a means to communicate your needs. I was contacted by a lady in Germany whose son was non-verbal and he'd been taken into hospital and he had no way of expressing how much pain he was in. So I found a set of these smiley face pain scale pictures and I translated them into German and sent them back to her so she could put them on her iPhone. Now, the hospital eventually got round to giving him a standard pain scale 3 days after he was admitted, and they put it on the wrong side of the door. This means the worst pain. So what am I going to do about this? Well, experience and research have shown that the best way to make a change in people's thinking is to reach people in their homes. And as with so many things to do with education, better informed caregivers are the key to making this change. But when we become parents, kids don't come with an instruction manual. And we don't always realise when something is wrong, or when we do, what to do about it. So what I'm trying to do is change how society identifies, accepts, and understands people with a speech disability, so that as and when we become parents or carers, we know what to do. Because when it happened to me, I wasn't prepared. Now, I was a fairly high achiever in my early life. I got 4 A levels and I got into Melbourne University, which was a pretty big deal where I'm from. And when I got a job with a national clothing company, I learnt everything I could about selling. And I was the #1 salesperson in Australia for spring-summer 1990. When I decided I wanted to sell wine, and I didn't have the essential marketing degree, I taught myself. I read books, I went on a few courses, and I volunteered at Salador in the Hunter Valley. And I became the top boutique wine rep in Sydney, calling on all the best restaurants. And then I became a mum. And I was the mother of the world's most beautiful baby boy, as you can see. But he wasn't developing as he should. And it was up to my husband to make me face the fact that we were going to have to get help for Liam. There are no more prizes or awards. No one calls you up on stage to give you a trophy when your son is more interested in playing with buckles than learning how to talk. And when my husband did make me accept the fact, I felt lost. Now, Gary Glenn, the sales motivational trainer whose cassettes I used to listen to, would say, "If it is to be, it's up to me." So like the clothing and the wine, I realised if I was going to be able to help my son, I was going to have to do it myself. So I went on courses, I read books, I spoke to every professional that I could get my hands on, and I learnt as much as I could. Now, Liam, like a lot of people with autism, has very limited interests then, but one of his obsessions was animals. So I took him to every zoo and open farm that I could find on the east coast of Australia. And it was there in the Ballarat Wildlife Park that he said his first real word, emu. So I read him animal books and I bought animal toys and we reenacted the annual Serengeti migration on the living room floor. That zebra's had a run-in with a crocodile, but he makes a full recovery. And it worked. He began to say words. Now, he couldn't call me mummy or ask for a drink or a sandwich, but he was connecting. And one of the courses I went on at that time, I learnt about PECS, picture exchange communication, where you use pictures to prompt functional language. I'll show you how it works. My lovely assistant. I know, and I really do know, that you want this chocolate. So I'm going to teach you, hand over hand, to give me this picture. Chocolate. And then I give you your reward. Thank you very much. Liam was able to remember to say the word when he saw the picture. And within 3 months, he was talking. He didn't need the pictures anymore. Now, by this time, we knew that Grace was also autistic. And like Liam, she hadn't developed any speech. What I lack in patience, I make up for in determination. And it was just as well, because while Gracie took really well to picture communication, she wasn't making any sounds. But the pictures reduced her frustration. She was able to get what she wanted, and she had a fantastic picture vocabulary. So I stuck with it for 5 years. As you can imagine, this gets kind of awkward to carry around. So I used to try and bring a smaller book with us, with less pictures. And we were in a toy shop one day, and Gracie was choosing a DVD. And she couldn't find the one that she wanted on the shelf, and I hadn't put the right picture in her book. So she lay down on the floor and screamed. And as I picked her up and carried her out of the shop before someone called security, I remember thinking, there has to be a better way. So I saw an ad for an iPhone on the side of a bus, and I blagged one out of Telefonica. I taught Gracie how to use it. And then I Facebook stalked a young iPhone apps, he's not that young, developer called Steve Troughton-Smith, and talked him into helping me create an app that would help Grace and other people like her. And the beauty of it was that it put the pictures in Gracie's hands. It gave her the power, so she could ask for exactly what she wanted. Now, this is what the app looks like. You've got folders, which look a lot like the pages in that big book, so that the user can find what they want quickly and easily and ask for it using their pictures, I want Humpty, or if they want to, their words. But this is the most important section, because this is where Gracie put all of the pictures of the things that meant the most to her. So we could see exactly what she liked and she wanted. The app can be adapted to suit any age. Now, you might be into Formula One, whereas I like shoes and handbags. And we each have the ability to ask for exactly what we want. And whether you're using a smartphone or a tablet, the device never has to get any bigger because the vocabulary is infinite. And one day I found Gracie taking a photo of a toy that she'd found on the internet. And it was a toy that I'd given away to charity 4 years before. Now, she could have just taken my hand and pointed to the toy. But she knew if she took a photograph and asked for it, that I would know she wanted it back. Now, it cost me $40 because it was now a collectible, but it was worth it to see that she had the power not only to get what she wanted when she could see it, but to look for it when it wasn't there. And while she has to engage with us, it doesn't replace her voice. So we are able to understand what she's saying if she wants to talk, or we can see the pictures. What do you want? I want chocolate. Chocolate? Okay. And it's enabled us to get to understand her so that we could take a step into her world by following what she likes, and she in turn now trusts us enough to want to be a part of ours. In 2011, I travelled back to Australia for my grandpa's 90th birthday, and Gracie stayed home with her daddy. And I phoned home one night, and Gracie was there, so my husband held up the phone so I could say goodnight to her. And across 17,000 miles, I heard, "I want Mummy." I waited 11 years for that. My other reward, and the reason that I'm invited here tonight, has been that by showing me how she wanted to communicate, Grace has actually given me a voice. And it's my chance to try and influence society that everybody, regardless of ability or imaginable intelligence, deserves to be heard. Thank you.